All right, let's talk about a real American legend, a figure so big he literally shaped the landscape. I'm talking, of course, about the flannel-wearing, axe-wielding giant himself, Paul Bunyan.
Now, we all know the stories, right? The ones from when we were kids. He's this big, cheerful lumberjack with his blue ox babe. The tales are usually pretty harmless, kind of goofy fables about the frontier spirit. His crazy strength is always just for laughs.
But what if there's something else going on? What if that friendly giant is actually a symbol for something way darker? What if he's not a creator, but a blueprint for what our source calls brutal creation? Now that's an interesting question. So let's do just that. Let's pull this icon apart a little bit. We're going to peel back the layers of the tall tale and see what's really going on underneath. See, the argument here is that if we just write him off as a kid's story, we're totally missing the point. The myth isn't just a bit of fun. It's this incredibly powerful cultural symbol that might just be hiding and even celebrating a kind of core violence in the American spirit. Okay, so let's get into this idea of a mask. How exactly does a simple, folksy story hide something as big as a violent national impulse? How does that even work? This table really breaks it down perfectly. On one side, you've got the Paul Bunyan we all know and love. But on the other side, well, that cheerful lumberjack becomes a piece of propaganda for dominating nature. His funny, superhuman strength, suddenly, it looks a lot like a way to make ecological destruction seem like some kind of amazing achievement. So here's the real kicker. The whole point of the myth, according to this analysis, is to make the idea of overwhelming force seem, well, normal. It takes this raw ideology of conquest and dresses it up in a friendly flannel shirt, making it seem not just acceptable, but admirable.
And this isn't just some abstract literary theory. This idea of a friendly story masking a brutal reality was a huge part of a very real, very powerful historical idea, manifest destiny. This is where Paul Bunyan stops being just a character and becomes the avatar for an entire era of expansion.
So, manifest destiny was this incredibly powerful belief, almost a religion, that the U.S. had a God-given right to expand and take over the entire continent. And an idea that big, that unstoppable, well, it needed a hero to match. It needed a Paul Bunyan. And you can see exactly how he fits the bill. The myth takes all the dirty, violent work, like clear-cutting forests and strip-mining the land, and washes it clean, turning it into the heroic deeds of one man. A whole century of messy, brutal expansion gets simplified into one guy's easy day at the office. Nature isn't a home, it's just something in his way. And that brings us right to the heart of the argument, this concept of brutal creation. It's a way of looking at all of Bunyan's famous deeds, not as acts of building something, but as acts of pure destruction.
So what is brutal creation? Well, think of it this way. It's when creation is really just a nice word for domination. It's the power to make a new world, but only by completely wiping out whatever was there before.
Okay, let's take a famous example. You've probably heard the one where Paul Bunyan creates the Grand Canyon just by dragging his axe behind him. Sounds kind of charming, right? An accidental masterpiece?
But if you look at it through this other lens, it's not charming at all. It's not art. It's a violent scar on the face of the earth. It's a symbol of a power so huge and so careless that it permanently changes the world without even noticing.
Or how about this one? He digs out the Great Lakes, the largest freshwater system on the entire planet, just so his ox can have a drink of water. The reality behind that story? It's basically a cataclysmic terraforming event. It's an act of pure, godlike arrogance. It treats the natural world like it's just a tool, something to be totally reshaped for a single, trivial need. And finally, let's get to his actual job, his whole identity. As a lumberjack, the stories say Paul Bunyan could clear-cut an entire forest by himself in a single morning.
And this, right here, is his true purpose in the myth. He's not a builder. He's the ultimate symbol of resource extraction. He is the relentless engine of industry, a force that looks at a complex living forest and sees only one thing: raw material, ready to be consumed.
So the big question is, why should we care about this today? Well, this final section argues that Bunyan's shadow falls over the modern American psyche in ways we might not even realize. To get this, our source uses a really interesting psychological model. Think of a nation's mind in three parts. You have the superego, that's the ideals, like liberty and justice for all. Then there's the ego, which is the messy, complicated reality of politics. And then you have the id, the deep, primal unacknowledged drive, the engine. And here's the big idea. Paul Bunyan is the American ideal. He's that hungry, primal engine, a force that doesn't care about consequences or restraint. His only goal, his only imperative is to do, to build, to get bigger and bigger, no matter the cost.
So the lesson that gets baked into the culture is pretty simple. You don't solve problems with careful thought or nuance. You solve them with overwhelming, brute force. And you can see the echo of that idea everywhere, can't you? From Silicon Valley's move fast and break things, to the way global power is sometimes projected.
Which really leaves us with one final question to think about. If this is all true, where do you see the spirit of Paul Bunyan today? Where is that relentless, overwhelming impulse to create by destroying still at work in our world?
And we'll end on that powerful thought, that maybe Paul Bunyan isn't just a children's story. Maybe he's the unexamined blueprint for some of the nation's biggest and most dangerous ambitions. It's definitely something to think about.